All righty, we're back. We're back with Mark Massey. Welcome back, my friend. How have you been since the 1 week that I haven't seen you? Anything change in the markets?
The markets have changed a lot. It's the noise that surrounds the market that's got even louder.
Hmm.
Obviously, all the geopolitical things that are going on, which are definitely going to affect our topic of conversation today. But
Yeah,
other than that, just running crazy with the family.
yeah.
You
I
know,
feel that. I feel that. I know you have a son in college, so I'm
I've
sure there's
got
a lot
two
to
in
be.
college, one in high school. It's track season. We're trying to get one into college for track. We got another one that's regional
Mhm.
contender here in Florida. My daughter in high school. So
Oh, cool. Very cool.
we're running all over the place.
Well, congrats to them. That's awesome. Regional contender. That's awesome.
Yep.
Very cool.
Keeping
Well,
us busy for sure.
definitely, definitely. So today we're talking a little bit about inflation. You know, I guess we start right off with let's define inflation. Would you like to
Okay.
take the first step on that?
Sure. Well, if you look at inflation, and you look at the textbook macroeconomics, inflation is the measure of how quickly prices increase over a set measure of time. So that's the textbook. What does it
Textbook
mean?
definition.
It's not so much prices, but it's your buying power. What happens to the value of your dollar over time? And when
Mm,
we're looking at rising inflationary rates, or at least what the Fed's calling right now sticky inflation, then we have to start looking at how that is going to affect us, especially with your listeners over
hmm.
the next 10, 20, and 30 years.
Definitely.
I have a lot of conversations with the pre-retirees that are in that 5 year window before retirement or in retirement. And it is definitely a topic of conversation on, look, if I've got 3.5% inflation, what do I need to make gross of my fees just to keep the same amount of money in spending power?
Yeah, not even to grow it, just to keep the same amount of spending. That's crazy.
Correct.
So you
Correct.
mentioned something sticky inflation. I wish could you touch on that real quick? I haven't heard that topic before.
Well, if you listen to all these pundits, they're talking about the Fed, Janet Yellen, these folks get on there and they say, well, inflation's been stickier than we thought it would be. That just
Hmm.
means it's not coming down. They want to
Hmm.
keep it at a baseline of about 2%. Well, the latest report that came out for March, we're at 3.5.
Interesting.
We've been a lot higher, obviously, with
Yeah.
the pandemic.
Yeah.
Um, but inflation affects everything. We'll talk about the yield curve in a little bit and what that portends for the future. But when you're looking at a 3.5% inflation rate and the Fed wants to put it at 2, the big topic of conversation is, are we going to see an interest rate cut, an interest rate rise, or are they just going to leave them alone?
Mm.
We've seen historically low interest rates up to the post-pandemic. Then we saw a huge series of increases, and now the market had baked in, at the beginning of the year, probably a rate cut here in the past meeting.
Definitely.
Now they've got a rate cut in June baked in. I'm not confident that's coming. Matter of
No.
fact, if we continue to see this sticky inflation and we look at what's going on around the world from a geopolitical standpoint and from a macroeconomic standpoint, there's a good case to be made that we may actually see a rate increase.
Wow. Wow. I wonder. Well, we'll see how the market reacts to
Yep.
that, especially when you talk about like how the market had already baked in the fact that oh no, we're gonna get cut, rates are gonna get better, everything's gonna get better. Now it's kind of going in the opposite direction, or could go in the opposite
Right.
direction.
I
So
think there's probably a 50-50 risk or 50-50 bet on the market right now, probably better than
mhm,
50-50. We look at the end of this week that we're not going to see that rate
yeah,
cut that we are expecting in June.
I bet that makes the stock market people very nervous, very
Well,
very
just
nervous.
not even the stock market. Think about the individual who's looking to buy a home.
Mm, yeah,
You look at an
yeah,
individual.
I-
You've got a lot of folks in your viewing demographic that are probably considering or about to buy their first home. And you look at what it
yeah,
cost 5 years ago to buy a home, just the cost of the homes. Obviously, we've seen a lot of inflation in home prices, but the down
definitely.
payment that you've got to put because they've become more restrictive on lending criteria and the interest rates. I mean, homes ago that said for the average home in the United States, all 50 states, that Absolutely. And that doesn't include, again, what do you have to put for a down payment on the home to begin with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. Wow. Yeah, that's a lot to process. It's definitely a lot to
Absolutely.
process. Um,
We've seen some areas here where I'm at in Florida where we've seen certain zip codes that have seen, and this isn't
exactly.
this year, but
Exactly. I
in
mean,
the previous
I
two
know
or
it's
three
like
years,
I
we've
feel like I've
seen
been
year
priced out of
over
my
year
own town.
appreciation
You know,
in
before it
specific
was you
zip
could find a
codes
nice
north
home
of
for
65,
200,000.
70%.
Now there's, everything's in
Why?
the 400s,
Everybody's moving to
and the
Florida.
wages just have not kept up. Obviously.
We're probably seeing the
Um,
same thing in Arizona, same thing in Texas. So you've got that inflationary pressures coming at you from three different focus points. Yep.
wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, everybody is moving to Florida. Yep.
Well, it's designed that way. And if we can want to go down a rabbit hole,
Yep.
that's the way the
Yep.
Fed's designed
Yeah,
it.
I know.
But the
For
bottom
me
line is
personally,
things cost
I'm
more
thinking,
over
I'm like,
time.
definitely, it really is.
Macroeconomic design says
Every angle,
that
every angle.
over time, due
So
to inflation,
what
again, we
causes
want to keep it, as
inflation?
the Fed
What
says, around
causes it?
2%. But as you continue to print more money and you flood the market with money like we've seen here recently, especially during the pandemic, the value of that dollar becomes less. Therefore, it takes more dollars to buy the same item in the grocery store. That's what causes the inflation. It's printing money is the number one driver right now. On top of that, you've got the geopolitical risk that's going on in the marketplace.
This is going to be basically the main part of the podcast is the effects of inflation. Like
Okay.
it affects obviously everything from houses to the pasta you buy at the store. It affects
Right.
everything,
Right.
right? But how does it affect like purchasing power, savings, and investment decisions?
Well, like we talked about at the onset, is what do you need to get in a return on your money as you're accumulating your money, and then, in retirement post your working career, decumulating that asset, gross of your fees just to maintain the base.
Hmm.
So I ran some calculations. We've got an inflation calculator we've designed here at my company, and I took $100,000 and I put in the current rate of inflation, 3.5%. This will give your listeners an idea of what it does to the value of your dollar. Over
Okay.
a 3-year period, putting that same $100,000 and just leaving it alone, sticking it under the mattress, bury it in the can in the backyard.
Mhm.
At 3.5% over 3 years, that $100,000 is now worth $90,000.
Wow.
Okay,
Oh, just over 3 years?
just over 3 years.
Wow.
It gets worse. 5 years, it's 84.2 thousand. At 10 years, it's dropped down to 79 or 70,000. At 25 years, it's 42,000. And at 50 years, let's jump way out. That
Mhm.
$100,000 is now worth less than $18,000.
Wow. And that was in 100 years?
That was in 50 years.
That was in 50 years. Oh my.
$100,000 at 3.5% over 50 years drops to less. It's $17,900.
Wow. That's crazy
Now,
to think that in 50 years, 17,000, like 100,000 will be worth what's worth 17,000 now.
right, which is why we're
Wow.
seeing this rush to physical assets, things that you can hold in your hand, not a piece of paper, precious
Definitely.
metals, real estate. I saw a
Mhm.
great meme. I think we talked about this on the last podcast, where a guy was holding 5 bars of gold.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, gold right now sitting, I didn't look at the spot price on it today, but let's just say roughly $2,500 an ounce.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I got 5 ounces of gold today, what does that buy me in a house? Well, 5 times 25, right?
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, if you look at house prices back in the 70s, the same 5 ounces would have bought you the average home back in the 70s.
Hmm.
So where do you put your money so that it doesn't devalue. That's why we're seeing this rush to hard assets right now.
Yeah.
Things that
And
we
when
know are at least going to baseline stay the same, if not appreciate.
so for hard assets, I know you mentioned gold. Um, are people also running to like real estate or maybe buying businesses or, a
Absolutely.
good index fund or something like that? How can the average person beat inflation?
Well, precious metals are definitely a place to go. A lot of people run to gold. I think silver is probably, for those starting out, a strong bet right now, at least to diversify your precious metals holdings. You look at what silver's done over the past 3 years, over the last year for that matter. But then you look at what are we using these precious metals for? What are we using silver for? Okay, how many ounces of silver just went up in the air over Israel and Palestine? Every one of those missiles and the things they use to shoot down the missiles has silver in it. It's spent. We look at all of the EVs and everything towards the Green New Deal. A lot of that has silver in it. So those are spent precious metals. We can't get those. So the demand for silver has outpaced. When your listeners are going to look, are they going to have somebody house that for them or house it themselves? Or are they going to be buying that in a paper asset where they're buying a silver certificate? For me, I'm buying the physical. I want the physical. I want the thing I can hold in my hand. Okay. Um, but gold and silver aren't the only ones. You look at copper. I just saw a report on the copper use soaring in China. Well, we've got 6 different mining outlets right now that we can't tap just in Alaska alone to help bring, the domestic production of these precious metals to the forefront. But we can't get at it because the current administration and the EPA aren't letting them build a road to get the mining equipment out there. So back to your earlier question, what causes inflation? Well, a lot of it's monetary policy, a lot of it's political policy. It goes back to the supply and demand. And you can go down all kinds of rabbit holes on why precious metals have been, in a lot of people's opinion, devalued on purpose. Because just think about this from just a pure um, military standpoint. If the price of silver goes through the roof, how much more expensive is it for them to build weapons? They want to keep that price down.
Yeah, absolutely. So, do you think? I don't know.
So,
I've heard.
not to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, we don't have to go back down that rabbit hole, but I know for me, my dad, he invested in silver way back in the day, back in the I think the 70s, 80s, and he did very well for himself. And it hasn't come up as high as it was back then, to my knowledge. And he always likes to say, "Oh, with COVID and everything, you would have thought it went through the roof and everything. Oh, it's manipulated, it's controlled." He always says, "It's controlled." Do you think there's any aspect of that it could be true, or is it just it's too big to control?
I think the former is the
Mm,
case, definitely. I think there are powers at play that intentionally force that price down. Because think about,
yeah,
and you think about oil. I fully expected oil this week, on Monday after what went on in Israel over the weekend. I fully expected oil to be up north of
yeah,
89, $90 a barrel.
yeah. A lot
It
of people.
barely
I heard a
moved.
lot of people thinking it was going over 100.
There's still a lot of people in the market that think it
Yeah,
will be there before the end of the year. But if your dad's still holding on to that silver, he's probably pretty happy over the last
yeah,
6 months to 12 months,
yeah. He
especially
he
the
has a
last
little
two
bit
or
of
three
silver, a little bit
weeks.
of silver. He loves those coins. He loves those coins. He
Hmm.
loves them.
Yep.
Um, so if someone didn't want to buy gold, silver, copper, or invest in certificates and whatnot, um, say
Hmm.
they want something they can check on their phone, right? A mutual fund or an index fund. What should they be
Hmm.
looking for, right? They should be looking for something that grows 7% at least, so that you have the 2-3% of inflation covered, and you still have a little room for growth as well.
And you got to look at what fees you're paying
Mhm.
inside that as well.
Okay.
So that's why a lot of people will go to an index fund,
Mm.
an S&P or a Dow index,
Yeah.
or these major indexes that have large cap large cap stocks that are paying strong dividends and have a history of paying those dividends. Um, ING used to have a fund, they probably still do, that's actually a trust, and it was made up of the original, I believe, 500 companies that were in the S&P 500. And today, don't hold me to this, it's down probably to roughly around 100 stocks
Really?
because things have been bought, sold, merged, and everything like
Yeah.
that. But they're all tremendous dividend paying portfolios.
Hmm.
So those are things to look at. Real estate would be another thing.
Yeah.
You know, we see, especially in your generation, it's all over social media, be it TikTok, Instagram, whatever. Um, People that are getting into the Airbnb business.
Definitely.
Not only are you getting appreciation on the asset, but you're also getting the revenue at a much higher rate than you would renting a property for 6 months to a family. You're probably getting triple that in a rental for a week. We have a family condo here on the beach, and during the summertime, we're probably getting north of $3,000 a week for it.
Really?
But I also know that property we bought pre-construction, it's probably doubled in price in the last decade.
Wow. So you have a property on the beach. You do like Airbnb and Verbo and stuff like that for that property where you're not using it?
My family does, yes.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yep, they have hired a resort company and they keep it booked. I mean, from spring break time probably through the end of September, it's rare that there's not somebody in there.
Wow. Wow. And you were saying something like 3,000 a week?
Right? Yeah, definitely.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. That's
Yep.
ridiculous. Oh my goodness.
Well,
That's ridiculous.
you look at my sons, their goal, as they graduate from college, they want to start investing.
Mhm.
They have that property
Absolutely.
that they can use when they go to vacation, and when they're not there, they're earning income from it and getting the appreciation. And because it's all going to be inside of a business,
Yeah,
they get the benefit of the tax deductions from the business.
definitely. Yeah, that sounds like a genius business model. I know for me, and I know for my family, some people in my family, they do, regular rentals, single family home rentals.
Hmm.
And they've been very successful in that. Um, I've only stayed in an Airbnb once. It wasn't the greatest experience for me, so I'm a little bit biased. Me personally, I love a good
Hmm.
hotel. I don't really understand the business model as much. For your property, it makes sense. You're right on the beach. I totally get
Right.
that. Um, and it's a business. It's a full fledged business. You got to hire cleaners. You got to
Absolutely.
vet the tenants and all that fun stuff. But having a company like you said, your family has, that's
Yep.
genius. It's like a property management company, but for Airbnbs. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Right. And you're also creating economic opportunity for other individuals. Because like you said, you got to have the cleaning crew. It's 160
Mhm.
bucks for them to come clean the property after somebody moves out. Um, you know, After they've
Yeah,
been there for a week. You've got the property management. You've got the people that have to do the upkeep and the maintenance on the property. So not only do you have the vertical, you've got the horizontal business growth as well.
yeah. I know it's a great service. I feel like the best businesses are the businesses that can help everybody. Everybody benefits from it.
Absolutely.
Nobody's getting taken advantage of, but everybody is coming away happy. I think that's the overall ideal
And
business
what do we look
model.
for? We look for the win-win.
Exactly. We look for the win-win. I love that. I love that. Is there anything you wanted to talk about in specific to inflation and really getting that message out there and really just teaching more about it?
I think you have to be cognizant of it when you're looking at your investment portfolio and making sure that,
Mhm.
again, if we're looking at 2% inflation or 3.5% inflation like we are today, or you're looking at what's going on in the
Yeah.
world that could drive inflation or make it, as we talked about earlier, stickier. I don't think we're going to see inflation coming down a whole heck of a lot. I would even agree with some of the pundits on TV and some of the articles that I read that say we may see the Fed actually adjust the 2% up north of 2.5, maybe even 3% as their goal going forward, because we have seen so much printing of money. There's so much cash out there. There's so
Hmm.
much,
Hmm.
and it's not just the U.S. It's other countries as well. So you have to be mindful of that when you're looking at buying investments. If you're looking at the stock market, You want to be looking at those higher dividend paying stocks, but you also want to diversify and get those mid cap and get those small cap stocks in there. Right now may not be the best time to go to get into those because of the economic instability that we've seen. You're going to see the smaller cap stocks and the mid cap stocks probably have a lot more volatility in them than some of the bigger ones. Look at what's going on in certain industry sectors. Obviously, if you look at the major stock players, who's driving most of the growth in the stock market right now? It's typically it's financials, but financials haven't had a great run for the last couple of years. What's driving it? It's the
Like tech
Amazons,
stocks, yeah.
it's the
Yep.
Facebooks,
The fangs,
the
yeah.
Metas. It's those stocks. I mean, you could probably look and pick 7 to 10 stocks that are the ones that are moving the indices on any given day, week, or
Yeah,
month.
because that's really it. It's just big players moving in a big way, and everybody else is just kind of stagnating a little bit. Yeah.
Right.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I was just curious about that because I find that inflation is one of those things that like creeps up and like you don't notice it. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like
Yep.
it's not like it just hits you. It's the slow death kind of, and it just kills me. I was telling my mom uh earlier this week. She's like, "Do you still go to the Lifetime gym?" I'm like, I have two gym memberships and one's closer, one's further, but the further one is nicer. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I don't. And there's kind of irony in this. I'm like, I don't want to go to the nicer one because it's further. Gas is at like $5 a gallon over here. I'm like, I don't
Right.
want to drive that. It's like a $3 trip just to get over there. I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
feel like
So
going to the gym that
that's an
bad when I got it right
economic
around the
cost.
corner. The
You
irony of it
know,
is just
it's a
cancel.
mental cost too. You got to
Yeah,
juggle it mentally. Am I
absolutely.
going to go one place or the other, and where am I going to be happier
It,
doing
it
my
is.
workout?
It is. Because
You
like
know.
I'll go to Sam's
You know.
Club and that price fluctuates so hard. Oh my gosh, I'm seeing 60 cent swings week by week, and it's just like, damn, I should have filled up last week. And I'm like, well, this week, sitting where it's at now, I'm like, I think the tank is full enough. I think it's full enough. We don't need to go anymore.
And my kids were joking the other day. Dad, we're going to buy some 55-gallon drums, or at least a bunch of 5-gallon, gas cans. And next time we see a dip, we're going to fill up. Because we're seeing the gas prices fluctuate, 25, 30 cents a gallon. I said,
Yeah,
hey, you know what? You're not buying the groceries right now.
yeah,
You should
yeah,
see what's going on with the groceries. And
yeah, yeah.
my son jokes. He goes, Dad, I've been working out really well. I said, how do you know you've been working out really well? He goes, well, because a year ago, I could only pick up $200 worth of groceries. Today, I can pick up $350 worth of groceries out of the car and bring it in all in one load. I'm like, you get it, son. You get it. So, we were talking about, where can we kind of
Yeah.
mitigate the risk in the inflation? And it's what you said earlier. You go to Costco, you go to Sam's. They just opened up
Oh,
a
nice.
BJ's around here.
Yes.
Buying in bulk. Look for the dips. Look for the sales.
Mhm.
Buy in bulk. Plan your
Yeah.
shopping.
Don't shop hungry.
Make sure you're yeah.
Especially
Don't
at Costco.
shop
Oh my
hungry. Oh my
god.
God, I learned that
I
lesson when I was
went
like
into
your age.
Sam's Club
Yeah.
with a couple of friends of mine, and we were just gonna pick up a pizza. It's eight
Yeah.
$9. You can't beat it.
Yeah.
No, why not? Save some money. And my friend, she's like, yeah, I gotta get one thing in the back, and I'm like, all right, yeah, that's fine. I gotta get some mayonnaise anyways. She's like, oh, I'll get a cart.
Yeah.
And my buddy Thomas is like, oh no, here
Yep.
we go.
But you
We
look
get
at the
out of it.
cost of
We
food.
get to the checkout line. Basket's
Yeah, for
full. I'm like,
$100.
guys, you just killed Benjamin. You just took him out. Took him right out your wall. You took him away.
So manage your shopping experience. Plan ahead. Look at what you're buying. When you look at, I just pulled this up. It was the current year-over-year inflationary rates. Now, this is it's not a full picture of what we've seen post-pandemic because of the inflation that we've seen. But if you're looking at all items food-wise, we're only up 2.2% year over year. So this is April to April. Okay. But when you look inside of
Okay.
that, you see that juices and drinks are up 27.5%. So all the Red Bulls and energy drinks and the juices for the kids, those are up. Roast beef's up 11.2%. Hot dogs are only
Monsters
up
and yep.
6%. Lettuce is up 5. Tomatoes are up 4.5. Whole chickens are only up 3. That's why everybody's eating chicken and not steak these days. But when you're looking at steak at $7.99 a pound, and you can get the chicken breasts at Walmart for
That's
under
right.
$2 a
Look,
pound.
I have so much
If you're feeding
food,
a family, where are you going?
so much chicken in that freezer. Let me tell you, I'm sick of chicken.
Yeah.
I'm sick of chicken.
Yeah. But then you look at some of the other things that are killing us. Video discs and other media. Who buys a video disc anymore? I don't know, but up 30%. Here's the one that is hammering me right now with 3 teenagers. Motor vehicle insurance up 22.2%. Okay. Household items for repairing your house. So basically going to Lowe's, you're up 18%. Individual care of invalids and the elderly up almost 15%. On top of all the surcharges we're seeing that these retirees are having to pay because of Irma. So again, vehicle repairs up almost 12%. Veterinarian services up 10%. The list just goes on and on. So it's affecting us in all areas. Clothing, men's shirts and sweaters are up 5%. Personal care products up 4.8%. So while we're down from the historic highs, which were, north of 10%, we're still seeing a huge cost to the dollar. And, the government wants to play it off like, well, we're down, or we only went up 2%. Well, 2% from the year, but it's not the same as it was when we started out 3, 4, 5, 7, 10 years ago. Okay. It's kind of like, my wife always likes to joke with me. She says, honey, I went out and bought a $150 dress. I saved you some money. I'm like, how'd you save me money? Well, she goes, it was $300. It was half off. I saved you $150. No, you just spent $150. That's the trick the government's playing on us.
Absolutely,
right now.
Absolutely. It's one of the most.
And they think we're too stupid to see it.
Exactly.
It's not that we're too stupid. We're too busy to see it.
Yep.
And they've done that to us on purpose too.
Yeah. How does inflation affect the price of goods made in other countries? Because I know a lot of the stuff we get is from China, Korea, different Taiwan semiconductors and whatnot. How does inflation for our economy and we're kind of a world currency with the US dollar. I know that's, trying to get stopped and everything, but whatever. How does that affect the price of goods, being imported or exported in our global economy?
Well, let's just think about something. What's one of the biggest imports we've got coming into the U.S. right now? Microchips.
Yep.
Okay. That's what a lot of the consternation is about Taiwan right now.
Yes.
Okay. That's why we're building plants here in the United States, which oddly I find if you need a lot of water to run a semiconductor plant, why in the world are you spending billions to build a plant in the middle of Arizona?
It's right by my house. I drove right by.
Yeah, I haven't figured that one out yet.
Yeah. Put it near a lake or something.
But think about everything that goes into producing that chip, moving it from wherever it's produced to the United States, then disseminating it from the point of entry to the store where you're going to pick it up.
Yeah.
Or to the manufacturer that's going to put it in your computer, and then getting that computer or whatever device that microchip's going into your hands.
Yes.
Okay, so think about all the inflection points where inflation could actually affect the cost of that good or service. Okay, the biggest is obviously the energy cost in moving it, the transportation, and the cost of developing it and producing and manufacturing the product. But on top of that, which has been in the conversation a lot lately, are sanctions and tariffs. Okay, those are the hidden taxes, the hidden inflationary things that we don't look at when we see the top line inflation number come out from the Department of Labor, the Department of Treasury. Those are the hidden costs that take away our buying power over time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It doesn't help that
the
wages
other thing
don't go up
is
as well.
Right. But the other thing that a lot of folks we don't think about because it's not forefront to our mind is what's the cost of manufacturing that? Well, they've got to borrow money to build the property, to build the machinery, to buy the goods that are going to go into the final product. Well, that loan comes with a cost too. So if we see interest rates going up, that loan repayment is going to be higher. Therefore, they're going to have to turn around and pass that on to the consumer as well.
Yeah.
So again, it hits us from all sides.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it. It definitely feels like it.
The question is, how do we stop it? And that's been the question for, since we could talk and write.
Now, does the government ever deflate money? Like, do they ever take money out of circulation?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The problem is right now, we're not in a position where we can do that. What they're trying to do is stop the inflation by driving interest rates up so that we come into what they're calling the soft landing.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is, as interest rates go up, equities typically go down. So if your bonds are going up in interest, the value of the bond and the value of the stock are supposed to move inverted or against each other. We haven't seen that recently.
No.
One of the things that I was looking at as we were preparing for today was the inverted yield curve. And, we look right now, the yield curve we're sitting at, and this gives you an idea of where the public is thinking as well as those who are in charge of our economic policy. So the 2-year treasury and the 10-year treasury they look at when they're composing the yield curve, the 2-year treasury right now is paying 4.984%. Okay? So you would think if I'm going to put my money and let the bank hold it for longer, I'm going to get a higher rate.
You would think, yeah.
Well, you'd think. So if the 2 years at 4.9, the 10 years inverted yield curve in this current inversion in history. Okay? The last time we approached this length, it ended in 1978. What was going on with interest rates in 1978? You're too young to remember. Those were the Carter years. Well, 72 is when that happened. But the Carter years. And we were literally seeing interest rates in the double digits pushing 20% plus. I think we hit most of the topics. The key there is make sure when you're doing your investment work, whether you're working with an advisor or you're working with yourself, that you take that inflationary rate into consideration. Take the unforeseen inflation costs, the cap gains, the fees in your investment. Make sure you're working with a financial planner that understands these things and looks at all these things. And again, you're talking to a younger demographic who are potentially talking to somebody my age, 50 plus. Don't be afraid to ask questions. If you don't understand something, it's your money, damn it. Ask them. Hey, you know what? I saw this on the news. This concerned me. Is that something that you think we should be concerned about and we should plan for? Inflation is one of them. What do you think is going to happen with this investment if this situation happens geopolitically? Are we protected? Okay? It's not so much making money, it's keeping it and making it grow above the rate of inflation. Now, does that mean we want to just get a 3.5% rate of return plus one? No. We want to go for the biggest return we can, but we don't want to put ourselves in a position where we risk losing that. And it goes back to our conversation last week. If you do this mental gymnastic, if I give you $1 and it grows 100%, and then it drops 50% the next year, and what do you need to make to get back to $1?
Would that be another 200%?
Let them think about it. Let them think about it. Let your viewers think about that one. Because I guarantee the answer that comes to the top of the mind is not the correct answer.
Well, that's it for today's podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Thank you for stopping by. And I will see you in the next one. Peace.
This video podcast is sponsored by Monzon Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the host and guests, not the podcast sponsor.
It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monzonwealth.com.